Today we're going to talk about masks and masquerades. So if you have interest in African arts, then you probably have a mask or a few masks hanging on your wall. But the question is, what are masks? Are they just expressions of arts, or are there more to them? So in this video we're going to explore a bit about that, and I will talk a bit about African spirituality, because that is one aspect of the African way of life that has been infused into everything we do, whether it's architecture or dressing or dances or just about everything we do. We've infused with some section of the African spirituality. So the thing is, the practice of African spirituality helps us connect with the divine through places or people or things or practices. And I'll give you a few examples about this. When a person is born with dreadlocks, in many African cultures they believe this person has been touched by the divine and is extremely gifted at something, or would have a very important task to perform during the course of their life. So people who have dreadlocks are considered special and are treated as such. Unfortunately, when we became Christians, we started seeing people with dreadlocks as cursed, as satanic, as diabolical, and every effort must be made to rid them of the spirit of dread that has possessed them. It's just hair, man. And when there are places where a divine presence has been experienced or felt, then that would make a real good site for a shrine. And isn't that how Christians set up churches, where the Lord appeared, where the Lord was born, where this happened and where that happened? So where there's been an encounter with the divine, a shrine is erected. And there are special rituals that help people connect better with God, help them seek out solutions that they need in their lives, and you know how that goes. And then finally, there are certain objects that are considered sacred that help us connect better with God. Because believe it or not, the typical African spirituality believes in the existence of an almighty God. But then the almighty God has servants, call them angels or whatever you may. But then he has servants who are in the elements, who are out there attached to us, who help us in our life's journey. And again, that's kind of similar to what we practice in Christianity, because there's an almighty God, and then he has angels that help him. And some Christian churches acknowledge the existence of saints who are our ancestors in faith, except these people also told us that our own ancestors were evil and satanic and should be cut off. But then we have to adopt European ancestors who would help us to go to heaven and see God. I don't know why this sounds very awkward, but that's not the subject of this video, and I'll probably talk about that in the future if someone wants a video where I make a comparison between African spirituality and the Christianity we practice, because no matter how I look at it, they all seem more of the same. So I don't know why we had to demonize one and extol one as such a real great thing. But back to masks. What are masks? Are they beautiful works of art you can place on your wall? Should you have masks in your home? And are there kinds of masks that are safe to have in your home? Are there masks you should not have in your home? We're going to talk about all of that, and I'll put you through what masks are, why they are made, who can make them, what functions they perform, and the relationship a mask has with a masquerade. So if you're ready, let's get started. But first, if you're new to the channel, click on the subscribe button and click on the bell so you're notified every time we make new content. So if you're real regular, I'm really glad to have you back. Welcome back, and thank you for checking in again and again and again. I appreciate every second you spend on this channel. Consider supporting us a little more by becoming a patron, and you can make a very little donation to help this channel stay up and support the work that we do in Africa. So thank you all, and let's get back to the video of the day. Masks. So these are items that are usually carved out of wood, but could also be made out of metal or just about any other material, because what makes the mask is oftentimes not the material with which it is made, but the significance that it holds. So the significance each mask holds depends on the reason why it was made. And so we're going to look at some of the reasons why masks are made. And number one, and very shocking, maybe to some people, would be that masks are not satanic symbols, but are actually learning aids. And I'll show you an example using a mask that I have in my home. So what I have in my hand is a mask, and this mask sits in the sitting room in my home, and it's a very beautiful piece, you can agree. Yeah, so I don't know if you can make out all of the features, but if you look at this, you'd realize that this has a bunch of faces. Now, to you, this is a mask, but to us, this is a novel. This right here is a complete African novel and a teaching aid. Let's call it lesson in a second, because every time you look at this, the whole story comes flowing back, and then you get to remember the lessons that this story holds. But I'll try to summarize what the story is in as little time as possible. Are you ready? Yeah. So if you look closely at this mask, you would realize that this has a very prominent figure here, which is the face of a man. And you can tell he's a very wealthy man from all the jewelry that he has on his neck and from the cap on his head. This man is a chief. Yeah, so let's call him Mazi Okoro. Now, Mazi Okoro is a very important fellow, but when you look very closely at him, you realize that his eyes are downcast and his lips are pouty. Now, what expressions come to mind when someone's eyes are downcast and lips are pouty? He's unhappy. Yeah, Mazi Okoro, despite being a very rich man, is also a very unhappy man. And all the wealth that he's acquired in his lifetime has been unable to make him happy. And so Mazi is on a journey to find true happiness. And he would say to himself, how about if I took a wife? Maybe she'd make me happy man. And so he found this beautiful lady, let's call her Nenia, and he got married to her. And for a period he was happy, but after a little while the happiness faded, and Mazi Okoro would become an unhappy man once again. And then he started his journey all over again in search for the next big thing in his life that would make him really happy. And then he found this other lady, let's call her Neka. So going into a relationship with her, and they would eventually get married. So Mazi Okoro has two wives, Nenia and Neka. But with these two ladies, he was happy for a while. But after a bit, he got bored again and became unhappy. And Mazi Okoro is wondering what next he should do to improve the joy in his life. And then he got a mistress, going into a relationship with this lady. Let's call her Adako. So Mazi Okoro is in a relationship with Adako despite having two wives who are Nenia and Neka, right? And he's considering bringing Adako home and make her a wife. If you look very closely here, you'll see there's a figure of a face in his head. So he's still contemplating it. He isn't married to a third woman yet, but he definitely would. But then, if you have followed the story up to this point, then it would be very easy for you to imagine that even if he married Adako, he would still come back to a point where he is unhappy. So what lessons do you draw from this mask, or from the story of this mask? That number one, despite how much wealth you acquire in your lifetime, you probably won't be happy. And that no matter how many people you surround yourself with, you still won't find happiness. And finally, that happiness does not come from the outside, but can only come truly from discovering yourself from the inside. So that's a beautiful story, and that's a story I've had fun telling year after year, because every time someone visited, they would try to figure out what the mask was, and sometimes they'll sit down and listen to the complete story of Mazi Okoro, or whatever I choose to call him. Now, this mask was made by an artist, a Nigerian artist, Honor, and he was my teacher many years back. So after my graduation, I would visit his studio and find something beautiful to buy. So Mr. Honor, if you ever see this video, I'm talking about your artwork, and thank you for making this. So did you know that masks could could tell stories and was our people's way of writing and communicating very important lessons, then every morning when you wake up and you meet the mask of Mazi Okoro, you'd probably think, well, today is another good day to feel contented with the life that I have and try to make the best out of it. Typical African, right? So I would ask you a question. If you were to give this mask a caption in a word or two, what would you call it? Let's talk about that in the comment section.